In this video, we're looking at H beams, L beams, or spandrel beams. Um, you decide what is applicable to your model and what you want to call it. But what we have in front of us is a slab. It's a 700 deep slab. And if I just flip to the bottom of it, you can see it's got voids, waffle slab, coffer slab, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to use that and detail all the perimeter beams. So if I go in transparent mode, yeah, we can see what we want to do. We want to delete all these H beams here. I think if I just flick over to one of the other views with the complex shape here and the fact that we can't really use these inner if you want to call it edges, with rebar sets, it makes it a bit challenging. So I'll show you how we work with it, how we get around that without having to revert to groups or single bars, that we can do all of this with rebar sets. And before we get started, I'll drag my little picture into view. Now, this is a picture I created from a screenshot from a prior model run I did, and also what I use for my thumbnails for the videos. But basically what we're going to try and do is replicate the reinforcement you see. So it's very simple. We've got these cyan bars that represent the outer legs. We've got these red bars that represent the outer as well as the inner horizontal bar distribution bars for the beam. Now these red ones in the inside obviously is at a slope, at an angle. You can see the inside leg of that ligature there. It's an angle, and they also extend through to the outside of the beam to hook onto here. Um, the other thing is we'll do 5 bars on the bottom, and we will do 6 bars on the top, and that basically will go around all 4 sides. And let's see if we can replicate that. So what I'll do to start out with, we'll need a few construction lines um, to get the middle of the slab, so we can mirror and copy and rotate around the middle of the slab. We also need some construction lines to capture the sloping part here. And then because we have a lot of slopes and tapers and stuff, we'll need a few construction lines that we can snap to when we use point by point input of bars. So what I'm going to do to start out with, I'm going to capture the perimeter of the slab as a snapping point, and we're going to copy the construction lines down. So I'll just use polycurve for this. So that's the one polycurve, and then what I'll do with that polycurve, I'll just grab it and I'll say copy linear, and I'll copy it to the bottom. And then what we'll do is we can grab this one and say copy linear, and we want to copy it in the Z direction 300 millimeters above. That's just so we can use that as a hook for a bar. And then if we copy this polyline, we can say copy linear, and we can copy that one Z down minus 300. So we get the same one down. So we'll use that for the hooks of the bars when we do the main bars in these beams. Now the other thing that we need to capture is, if we go into one of the views, is to say we also need to capture this angle here, which is on that edge. Back to our 3D view, so it's this one here, and then what we want to do with this one is we want to copy it, copy linear, and in the X direction we want to just add 300 to that as well. Again, it's used for the bar legs, for the horizontal bar legs. So that will give us that one. And now what we can do when we've got, take that one, copy those two, and say copy mirror, and then snap to the middle here and over to the middle there and say copy. That will replicate it on that side. And then also we need a diagonal so we can get the middle of the slab. So I'll do a middle there. This is just a bit of prep work, and we'll be switching construction lines on and off as we go. And now that we've got those, we can just grab those two and say copy rotate. We can pick in the middle of our slab and say we need 3 more of these at a 90-degree angle. And once we say that copy, we then replicate those on all the sides. So that will give us, I think, just about all the information we need to put the reinforcement in. Okay, so let's start with the leakages. Now, um, if I go to rebar and I go to crossing bar, and I will pick N12 ligature from the catalog, and I'll also go and set our class 5 as we've been using throughout the series. I'll clear the start and end offsets, and for the number of, I'm going to hit for a target, and the target's going to be 200 millimeters. And once we've got that, if we now hover over the section, you can see, because this is an item and it's a very complex item, there's a bit of a retarded, because Tekla is obviously going through a lot of calculations. But now that we've got that shape, if we click on that shape, Tekla will obviously think of it. And then, there's not a sensible way to click to create a stirrup on this edge, because you can click this, and you can click this side, and you can click that side, and then that side you can click, and you can drag this arc, this grip here all the way to there and try and complete it. Yeah, but it's not. It becomes very complex and very time consuming to do it that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to quit the command, and I'm going to go to this grid line 1 view, which is this view, and I'm going to say more point input. Make sure that we've got a linear input. Our settings are still the same, and all I'm going to do here is going to click around that perimeter, because that's the shape of the ligature that we want to create, and then that's the shape of the bar. And then in terms of the distribution, it will go from this corner here all the way to the back corner there. Now, as soon as we do that, you can see that Tekla gives us the desired shape. And now that we've got that shape, we can just click on it, and we can put off our leg faces for a minute. We can click on that shape and then go to End Detail and call up our standard just to reset anything we've had there. And 90 degrees is good enough for this exercise. And we can just click, and Tekla will then give us the desired shape there. Now, before we go copy this all over the show around the perimeter, we just need to look um, at the spacing and the end distances. Now, there's going to be big bars that come in here. There's also going to be a lot of H bar, horizontal bars that comes in here. So this can't really be in the corner, because you really need some space. And what I mean by that is, if I just drag our picture in view again, if we look at that, we need room for this, for this to come through and that to come through, and this needs to stop short. So uh, looking at that, I think what we do is we click on those bars, and just as a starter, I think we just give ourselves 150 millimeters each side. And once we do that, we can see that that looks a lot better. And I think that's good enough for what we want. And now what we can do is we can grab this and say copy rotate, pick the center of our slab, and this is where those construction lines really come in handy. And we can say we need 3 of them, and we also need to rotate them at 90 degrees. And if we say copy, we populate all 3 sides of the slab. Now, we know that this side and this side we're going to regard as our dominant side. In other words, our reinforcement will run through there, and these will crank over it or step over it. So we need to bring this and this leg shorter. So now if I go over to visibility, and I'll just make sure that everything is switched on, including my leg faces. And I now get to the bottom of this, and I click on these bars. I can then hold in my alternate key and select all these grips. If I do that, I ensure that all the grips, including my leaders, my whatever property modifiers I would have, and also my faces, are selected. So they're going to move with. And then I'm going to say move linear. And I will move this handle to this dotted line here, which is basically the top of the coffer. If I do that and I say move, you can see how nicely that now moves out of the way. And because we have a 100, let me just put out that comment, because we have a 150 clearing, clearing as you can see there, we miss these bars. So that works out quite well. Now, if we just go to the other side, if we click on this one, And again, we do alternate and select those handles. We can then again move linear, and we can grab this and over to that side, same move, and that will sort out this side. And now all we need to do is repeat it at the top. So if we get to the top, again we do alternate, select those handles, move linear. We can pick this one in there, and you've got to watch the data, that sort of the values that pop up in your dialog, just to make sure that you're actually snapping in the correct orientation before it's too late, before you make a mistake and don't see it. So always keep an eye on the movement. And then if we click on this one again, we can do the alternate select over our handles, move linear, and then we can move from here back to our dotted line again, which is the 600 move. Okay, and that sort of deals with the ligatures. So if we look at this in 3D, we can now see we've got 4 sets of ligatures complete. These 2 edges being the dominant edges, and that edge and this edge being the secondary edge. And it's only secondary because of how the main bars are going to flow on top of the other. So this will be in a layer 1, and that will crank on to a layer 2 in this corner. Okay, and also, you want these legs to, the top and the bottom leg of this legs to be in layer 1, and as soon as you cross over these, they can't. It's impossible. So that's why we stop them. Okay, now the next obvious thing to do is to deal with the inner horizontals. It's the bars that distribute across this tapered edge here. Because it becomes, if you start putting in the bottom and the sides, it becomes difficult to deal with these because you can't see them. So it's always good to sort of have a bit of a process going here. So what I will do in this regard is, I think we need to give these bars, some sort of a um, reference in terms of the face. Now I'll just show you quickly what I mean. If I go to more and I say give me a point input, and then this time what we'll do is we'll pick a 16 millimeter bar, 16 main, and we'll pick the red bar for distribution. And again, we'll just go and delete our offsets, and we keep the value at 200. That's okay. And now if we just pick around these handy construction lines again, that's a 300 leg. And the reason why I'm drawing this leg and not using a normal hook is because a hook, you can't control the layering on a hook. You're gonna have to pull it back by adding an offset in the property pane, but you can't use it. I'll show you what I mean as we go on. And then for the range, you can basically, if you pick a range from there to there, for instance, that will work. But I mean, the problem here is that, well, that's actually worked quite well. Maybe we can get away with this. Okay, now all we need to do is deal with the issue that this face here says it's in level 1. It should be in level 2. And sometimes you need to do this twice before it registers, and there it registers now. And now we can see that's actually worked out quite well. I think I'll just leave it like that. Okay, so now that we have those there, we really need to split them as well. And if we go and click on these bars, and we go to our split and we load our defaults, just to make sure that we've got a lap in the middle and everything is cool. If you hover over this, you can't split it. It doesn't pick up the edge, nothing. Not even, it's just Tekla doesn't see a face there for some reason. So the way I work around this, or I get around this, is I'll just flip this over into 3D mode again. And then once again, I'll just draw a construction line from this point on the top to that point. That sort of gives us if you want, a edge to snap to. And I'll do the same in the bottom. I'll go draw a line from this end to that. And we only needed to do this once. Now that we've got that, I can take these bars and I can isolate them, say show only selected. And then to get our construction lines back, I can just go over to the eye, switch them off and switch them back on again, and they just come straight back. And now if we look at that, we can see for this bar, we actually have that and this to snap to, the midpoints, to create this splitter for us. So what we can do is, let me see if I can Oh well, that I think that will work. Let's just leave it like that. It's just I'm trying to get less confusing view. But if we click on this one now, and we go to splitter, down the bottom here, instead of having the single point mode, we just click it once to get the multi-point mode. And then what we can do is we can go and look for that midpoint. You see there, the Tekla gets the midpoint now. And we can do the same at the top. Tekla gets the midpoint. And once we have those 2 points, we can middle mouse and Tekla splits it. And you can see it's now got that tapered edge there, no problem. So that's the way to get around that. And now we really don't need that line and that line anymore. So I'll just remove them as we deal with them. And if I do a redraw, you can see that these tapered bars came in very nicely. It's even respected the fact that there's a bar there. It's got the edge right there, and on the other side, it's the same. Now, the only thing we need to do is if we go to this edge and we see how that looks now, because we're going to have main reinforcement along the top, and we're also going to have main reinforcement along the bottom, we don't need this bar and that bar. So what I'm going to do here is I'll click on that, and I'll just give ourselves a 200 start at the top, Control A, and a 200 start at the bottom. If I do that, I now get 3 bars there. Now you can see how nicely that works. We now have our main bars going up in that row, our main bars in the bottom going down there. And if you look at the distance between them, they sort of nicely spaced evenly. So now that we know that that works, I'll go back to the 3D view. I can say Control P to get a plan on it. So we've got our XY view. And now I can grab these bars and I'll switch off my leg visibility. I'll just reselect them again. Now that I know they work and they're correct, I can then say copy rotate, and we can pick the middle again, and then we can say we need 3 and we need 90-degree rotation. And once I do copy, you can see that we've now populated all the bars automatically. Now let's just look at interference quickly. Now this corner works automatically because it's sort of rotated around. That one is the high side. Now this is the high side. And if you come around here, that is the high side and that is the high side. So it sort of automatically just works clash free. So that pretty much takes care of the inner bars for us. And you can see all those inner bars actually extend to the outside of the beam, to the inside of the ligature. Okay, now that we've got that done, let's have a look at the horizontal beams around the outside of the beam. So for that, I'm just going to switch off my construction lines temporarily so you can just see a bit better. And this time I am going to use the crossing bars. So if I go to crossing bars, and again, that's still correct. We might as well use the same offsets because the same is going to apply here. And I think everything is okay. So what we now can do is we can hover over this edge, and you can see Tekla takes a bit of time to actually find the edge because of the complex shape. And now if I click that edge, Tekla marks it as a ligature all the way around, which is what we want. And then we can say, okay. And Tekla will think a while because it's now, it's just the thing with crossing bars. We also get our dreaded black screen, and this is where a lot of people start panicking, but it comes back. And then, we're left with those bars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those bars, and I'm also going to take the concrete, and I'll just isolate them by saying Shift Show only selected. So it leaves us with those perimeter bars, and now we can just split them up quickly. So if I click on them, I can then go to a splitter, load my defaults again just to make sure I'm splitting in the middle. And then if I hover over this concrete edge here, and you see it doesn't light up to the edge, it's because we're still in multiple pick mode. So if we just keep on toggling till we get to single pick mode, we can then, the little line lights up then. And if we then click it, we are splitting there. I also want to split down the middle. Now, sometimes with the middle, you've just got to sort of look at your dimensions to make sure that you're on the middle. We can also split this edge. So it's looking good at the moment. And then we can do the same on this edge. Again, just try and find the center here. There we go. And then this edge. And then I think we're on the second last side. So this side, that's the middle, that is the corner, and then the last face is this one. Yeah, so it's just, there we go. And now that we've split all of the sides, we're basically left with a perimeter bar that looks like this. We're lapping in the corners or for the corners, but we're also lapping midway, which gives the guys on site a smaller bar to deal with, an easier bar to fix. So if we just go redraw all, we can see what that looks like. And now what we have to do is, as we go along, always do a sanity check to see how things are working out. So you can see we've got a bit of clashes here at the moment. Excuse me. First of all, we need to sort out some of the faces here. We can see it's put it inside that one. So if we click on this bar now and we just put on our leg faces and we look at the faces, we can see all three sides are on 3, 3, 3, 3. So if we take that and we just say we need you to move up outside one layer, 1. So that changes to 2. And now if we look at that, we can see they pretty much on par with those. So all we need to do to fix this issue is to look at what's going to be the easiest to move, the outside or the inside bars, because you can see the inside bars here is now lapping with those. So what we can do now, just to start out with, I think I just want to see if that one moves up, that one moves down. So if we move this one up, that one comes down. Let's just see what happens. We might have to mirror some bars. Actually, okay, let's do this. If I go to this view, this is from grid 1 from the other side. We can now say, I'll just go into 3D again. We can see the problem is this bar here is clashing with this leg here. So what we can do with these bars, we can either use these bars or the inner bar. The inner bar is probably going to be easier to manipulate in this case. So what we can do with them is, let me just see what this side look. So these sides are 100% clashing there, and on the other side we actually have space, so we can move it up a bar. So if we take this bar and we change the start offset, which is the bottom, I believe, let me just see, it's the bottom. If we change that, and we also have to look at the spacing is 150. So if we change the start offset by 1 bar diameter, now we're looking at a 16, so it's a 19 millimeters. So if we make that 219, enter, we can then say this one can be from the top, it can stay 200. Actually, there we can do auto calculate. And then for the distribution, we can make exact. And we can say 2 times 150 just to start out with. Now, once we do that, we can see what's happened here. This bar is slotted underneath, which fixes up that one. And then we'll have to fix up that one too. And if we look at the other side, we can see we've got heaps of space there. So now if we look at this one needs to go down a bit on both sides, looks like it. So if we just make this one go down a bit, so at the moment it's 200, so the start offset is less 19. So again, if we make that, what would that be, 181 for the start, and then this is whatever it is, and then for the distribution again we'll just go 2 times 150. If we do that, that sorts that out. So now you can see that that corner is pretty much sorted out. If we go to the opposite corner, that corner is now sorted out. And if we look at this corner, seems to be working all right. And this one seems to be working all right. I am missing one. Oh, there we go. We still have this one. So this one should be the same as that side, I believe. So if we take this bar and we say give us a painter, and we go to this side, we click on this bar and we say modify, it fixes up the reinforcement for us. So let's just go back to our 3D view and just inspect everything. So if we go back to start at this corner, we can see we've got no clashes with bars there. If we go to this corner, we do have clashes with this bar, and that's got to go up a leg. So in this one, we probably haven't set this one yet, so that's 219. This is whatever it is, and then for the exact spacing again, it's 250. If we say modify, that fixes that up. So there's no clashes on this corner, and there's absolutely no clashes on that corner. So that looks good. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can move on to the main reinforcement. And in this case, we'll probably start with the bottom bars. So again, here, I'm going to switch on my construction lines because I'm going to need them for this exercise. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a bar. I'm going to say rebar. And I am going to say, I suppose we can use point input. And then I'm going to say I want to start here all the way down 300, all the way to the other end, and then up. So that's the bar shape. And the spacing will be from there to the bottom. And that will give us our bars. Now we never did say set the property. So if we click on here and we go to our catalog, we can pick 20mm bars. We'll make them blue. We'll wipe the offsets, and we will say that the number of required is 5. And if we say modify that, now we get more realistic values. Now you can see because we drew the bar in with a face here, it's got a face to work with, and therefore it automatically calculates the the amount of cover it needs here to miss the other bars. And we will have to make some adjustments. So if I look at this bar and look at the other end, it's looking pretty good. So what we can do with this bar, just if we look at this bar, we just click on it and right click and inquire. We can see it's a pretty long bar, so maybe it will just be, it's a 20mm bar. Maybe it will be wise if we split. It's a 17 kilo bar, so it's quite heavy. So maybe what we can do is if we click on this bar, we can say give us a splitter, and the splitter type is I want to keep it in the same plane, so I'm going to crank it, and then we'll leave everything the same at the moment. And then we can just go and look for our center mark again. It's there, so that will crank the bars. And if you want the crank to be in the middle of where that is, we can just click on that, and you'll see that the crank length is 800. So if we offset this by minus half of the crank length, which is 400, and we enter that, you can see how the crank then moves across to center at about your splitter line. Now that pretty much wraps up the bottom, but we do, oops, just get back home. What we need to do now is just look at what it looks like from the side. So for this, I'll go to our grid line B again. So if I go to that's 1, that's B. If we now do a redraw here, we can see that in here, and I'm not seeing the ligatures in that direction. And if we just tilt a little bit this way, and we look at our depth of view, you can see this is why we're not seeing those ligatures. I don't have a deep enough view. So if I double click on here and I say the down, let's just increase that to 1200 and say modify. You can see we now can see that ligatures. If I show me the cut, you can see we're cutting a little bit more. Delete. So what I want to do is if we look at that, you can see that in here, I'll take that and I'll also take this. Maybe I'll pick this first. I'll pick that one and then we switch off the leg visibility. If I pick this one, I pick this one, I pick this one. Right click, show only selected. The issue here is that I really want this. We can move this ligatures now, but I really let me isolate that one and that one because that's really what I want to sort out. So if I do this, the issue here is that we can see if you click on this, the range at the bottom is here and it's working from here. So it's somehow because this is a tapered edge, that calculation doesn't go down well for some reason. And it also looks like it's got complications here. So if we just, I'm just going to leave that because this is the reason why this one so far, it's picked it up from the horizontal bars. I'll show that in a minute. But what I want to do here is I just want to quickly move this one. Now, what I always do is if I can just get my zoom, so I don't know if you guys are going to see this on the video, but there's a little line here that basically shows where the straight part of the bar meets the radius. There's a like a tangential line here. So what I normally do is I just eye it in there. So what I do is I'll just move on the center of that line until I get to that sort of intersection there. It won't snap because there's nothing to snap to, but it's accurate enough at this zoom. I'll click there and then I'll click to the end of this range. And what I'll do is I'll read the Y value, and we can see we're looking for about 52.5 millimeters. So if I click on that bar and I go and change the end offset to 52.5, you can see how that now moves back to where those two intersect, which is exactly what we want for now. We might have to do more work, but if I rotate back, you can see the reason why this is pushed in so far from that edge is to miss this radius here. So looking at that, I think that bar is looking pretty good. We will have to tweak the position of these soon because it's hitting there. Maybe what we can do is we can do it right now. So if I go back into my 3D model, we just go there and do a redraw and go Control P so we can look at it from the top. If you look at this, you can see these bars lie within these and they sort of interfere there a little bit. Now what we can do is I suppose we can fit this bar outside of here in here because I can see there's a lot of room there and a lot of room there. So what we can do is if we take a measurement from the center of this bar out to the outside of the concrete, we're getting 98 millimeters. Now if we just bring our calculator into view quickly and I'll just say stay on top and I'll delete all what I've got there. So if we take 98 millimeters, what we need to take from it is half of that bar diameter. Now that's a 20 bar, so the um, actual diameter is actually 23. So half of that will be 11 and a half. So if we take 11.5 off that, it's 86. But we also need to subtract half of this bar, which is a 12. So it's a 40 diameter, so it's another 7 millimeters, so minus 7. So if we plug 79.5 in there, it should work. So let me just take that out again. So if we do this and we plug in here 79.5 and also at the end 79.5 and I do that, that actually works perfectly. So now what we can see is those are actually 100% aligned with those. And because we moved that out a bit, it misses there, and the following one is out of trouble. Now we should have the same situation on the other side. So that should also resolve any clashes we might have will have had there. So that's good. And now that we've got that one set up, we can just click on it and say, give me the painter and go over to the other side, click on that bar and say apply the same changes. So that will fix up the spacing on that side. And just like that, we've now fixed up all the ligatures. They don't clash anymore. We've also finished up this bar. So what we can do with this bar now is because that's now done, we can copy it around, but we're going to have to change this splice on these sides to hop over these bars. So, but let's copy them around first. So if I do that and I say copy rotate, and I click on the center of the slab and we see we need 3 at 90 degrees. We can then say copy. That will populate all the others for us. Now we know because we did this one, that one will be similar. It will be correct. What we need to do is change these two because they need to, if I just sort of tilt around here, you can see the problem there. So what we need to do first of all is I want to get rid of this splitter. So the bars are all flat. And I want to do the same on the other side. I want to come here and delete this splitter. So the bars are all flat. And then what I want to do as a first instance is I want to split these bars straight. So I don't want to create a crank. I just want to, we've already used cranks there, so we know how to use cranks. So this time I just want to use a normal splitter. So what we can do is we're going to split. And then if we hover over it and we find our intersection there, we can split. So that's split them next to each other. So what we can do here is if we click on that, first of all, we can say if we look at the arrow, we just tilted, the arrow is pointing towards us. So what we want, let's just change the arrow direction. It's going to make it easier. We want, if we're looking up now, we want the left-hand side. So if I click here and I say I want the lap on the left, that sorts that out. But I also want the lap on top. So if I say lap placements on top, modify, that gives me the desired result there. See how that bar goes now over that one, and this one's remaining in the same layer. We will have to address these clashes now by moving that bar a bit in. So if we go to the other side now, and I click on this bar, again I can trigger my splitter, and I can pick my point here. That splits it. So that's worked out very nice. So now what we need to do is we need to do the same with the other side. If I now click on this bar, we can grab the splitter again, hover over this point, split it, so that works. And then up to this end, we can just split it here. So that works, but this is on the wrong side, so I can just click on my splitter line and say change direction, and it swaps the. So that works quite well. So the reason why I did that is just to show you that you can get away with doing things like this without having to create complex crank bars. You can also just do it with lapping the bars on top of each other. Now, what we need to do is if we look at this, I want to go to a grid line A. So if we go to grid line B, doesn't matter, one of those two. And if I go Control P and I do a redraw, we can now see that the issue we have here is that actually I got the wrong elevation. So it will be on grid line 1. Control P, redraw. Now the issue here is this. We really, if I take this bar and I also take this bar and I say show only selected, we've got the issue here. We need to fix up this. So at the moment what's happening here is if we take a dimension, actually if we take a dimension F from here to here, so one of the covers is 98. So if I click on it, you can see there's 98 there. But what it should be, what we do want for our first offset is if I take an F, again, I'm looking for that little line. You can see it a bit clearer here. There's a little line there. So if I just sort of eye it in there and I measure to our point there, and again, I'm looking for the X value. It's 131.8, so let's call it 132. So if I click on this and I change that to 132, that moves it up there and we don't have an issue anymore. So what we need to do, if we do a redraw, we also need to make sure that it's 132 here. So if I click here, I can grab 132 here, and that moves it up, and that's it. So if we now go back to our 3D view, and I'll just redraw everything, and we look at what we've actually done here now, is you can see we've got our main reinforcement in the bottom overlapping quite nicely over each other, and they stop short not to interfere with the horizontals. And we've also got them in this corner, and then the other bars are just cranking above each other like so. And on this other corner we also have no problem. So all four of the corners are quite clear. So that takes care of the bottom reinforcement. So now we're left with one more set, and that's the top reinforcement, and we'll be done. So what I'm going to do, yeah, this is a bit of a different scenario. So we will use the same method as we did before in terms of I'll just swing this around so I can actually see what I'm doing. We'll use the same method as we did with these bars. So I'll go more, and I'll go point input, and it's still at 24, and I will just wipe out our offsets, and this time we'll have a number of, and the number of will be 6. Let's just increase it, and then what I'll do is I'll draw the bar in again. So we'll start here at this, beg your pardon, I snapped in the wrong place, so I'll just re-initiate that. So just want to make sure that I see my, there we go, from there to there is 300, and then over to the other side, and then down 300, and we can accept that as a bar. And then what we can do with the range, we can come in Or we can pick this side as the range. So we can pick this corner over here, and we can go to that first intersection line there, and that will give us our bars. Now, what we need to do with these bars is we just need to make sure that they are in the correct layer. So on that side, I'll switch on the leg faces. So that's one, so it's taken one everywhere. So if I click on this bar, I can then let me just click on the bar. If I click on the bar and I say send it inwards by one, and sometimes you just need to do it again. So that's taken it in by one, correct? It's also in by one here, but on this side we need it in by two. So when I click on that, I can, I think, push this to the third layer, and it wraps that up. So that works out quite nicely. It's worked out quite nicely there. And if we go to the opposite end again, we can just rotate around, click on the bar, click on this face, and make sure this face is in our third layer. So this is a very good example of how you can have one bar but in different layers. So there's 3 on the sides and 2 on the top. So rebar sets gives you that ability to do that. But we have an interesting problem in the sense that over here, obviously this bar is out of it's whack because it's measuring from this line. It's sort of, that's a tapered, so it's a bit complicated there. So what we'll do is we'll deal with that in a minute. And also we might have to just relook at our ligatures with this one. That's also going to be a problem. Okay, one thing at a time. So let's go to a view where we can actually see those bars. This view will do. And let's start by saying that this bar on this end. So we'll take this bar and we'll take, and I'll switch the, if you can't select the bars properly, just switch off the leg visibility for a minute. And now I can select this ligature and that, and say show only selected. Okay, and we can push this one back. That's the first thing. We need to push this one back there. So it's the 36 dimension. So if we go F again to measure, we find our little tangential line there. We go over to that snapping point and we look for the Y, and that's 75 moles. So if we click on that and we change this to 75, that brings our bar in. Okay. So if we do a draw, that sort of sorts that problem out. But now there's another problem. We've got these bars in here clashing, and what they'll do on site is they'll rotate these in a bit. So I'll show you how we get around that. Also, I do not like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that up first. So if I go to the plan, just redraw everything. The issue is down here where we have wrong corner. Where's our bar? No, we did it in this corner here. So let's just start here. So the issue is this bar and this clashes. So we need to introduce a bit more cover here. So maybe this time we go to that side of the bar. So the last time we measured from here to here as being 90. So if we get our calculator again, we can say we've got 98. And to the 98, we want to add half this bar size, which is 23 divided by 2, it's 11 and a half. That gives us 109. And then we're going to go half of the ligature, which is another 7 plus 7. So we want to go 116. So if we click here, and I'll just take this away. So if we populate 116 and a half here, and also 116 and a half here, if we do that, that will put it on the opposite side. And we do have an issue with a bit of clashes here. So what I'll do in a case like that, when it gets a bit messy and you're really struggling to get your spacings to work, what you could do is you can just click on the spacing line. You find the spacing line, which is, if you can't see it, what you can do is switch off everything else except your guideline, and it becomes available. And then when you click on it, you can go to modify, And then you can just drag those two that are now being a pain, which is this one. You can just drag this one sort of into a mid area where it doesn't um, bother. And then you can go to do the same on top. Just drag it into a mid area where it's not a problem. And that sorts it out. So that sort of makes it clash free. And now that you've got that, you can click on it. You can paint it. And then hover to the other side. Click on this bar and say modify. And that fixes that up. So now we really have a good solution in terms of, these bars won't clash anymore. So now that we've got that done, we need to also break it up because, the bar is too long. So what we can do with this one, we can just split this as well with a crank in the middle maybe. So if we do that, and we say standard, and we want a crank, we'll keep it standard, and again we'll try and find our midpoint. Sometimes easier to look at it from that side. There we go, we're right there. And then again, like we did below, if we click on it, make our splitter visible, we can then click on the splitter and then again just pull it back by -400, and that sort of puts it in the middle. Now, I mean, this is just, showing you how to detail. It's not necessarily accurate by design, because by design, say, imagine we've got 1, 2, 3 columns here. That splashing will work on top of the column, but that one won't. What you need to do is probably move that either side of the column with two different splits. But I'm just, the big thing is the corners. I want to show you how we work around the corners. So now that we've got that one done, what we can do again is, because that's the only top one we've got at the moment. If you look at that, so if I click it, select it, Control P, that's the only top one we have. We can then say copy rotate in the middle again. We need 3 of them, and we need a 90-degree, and we can say copy. That populates all the others for us. Now we know this one and that one will be okay, but these will probably need some rework, and the rework will be taking out this splitter to start out with, and the opposite splitter. And then what we need to do is try and get these bars to go in underneath the others. So it's easily done with, and again, we'll just have to look at this intersection here. But let's do the splitters first. So if we grab the bar and we go to splitter, we load our defaults to give us a normal split. We can then just hover over to our mark again, which is there, and that splits it. And then we can grab our splitter and say we want the split to be on the right. We say modify, that changes it to the right, and we also want it on top. And we do that, we then have the bar stepping in underneath those, and those are still on the outside. So that fixes that problem. So if we go to the other side, we can just repeat, click on this one, click on our splitter, get our split position just by snapping onto that edge here. Sometimes it can be challenging. So if we click that again, we've just got our splice on the wrong side. So if we click on the splice and we just flip our direction, it flips it around. So now those bars go underneath there. We still have those clash in the corner, but we're going to clear that now. And then we just repeat this side and splitter. And if we hit this section here, and again, if you just rotate it around, we've got a clear view. You can get to it easier. So that splits that in the correct place. And if we go to the last point and we split over here, and again, just make sure that you splitting in the sort of right place. So if we click there, that's the wrong side again. So we can just click on it and flip it. And there we go. So these are all in the correct spots now. Now what we need to do is we just need to address this. Now if we look at our view on grid 1, a redraw, we can see this is the issue we have. So if we click on this, we also have that issue that we need to address, and that's a very easy fix. So first I want to just fix the spacing. So if we go to the spacing here, we're looking at, if we take a dimension here, from there to there. So we've got to change 98, and what we want to change it to, if I just click there to there, we want to change it to 130. So if I click here, I can change 98 to 130, and that fixes that up. And we need to make sure that we repeat it on the other side. So if I click here, Again, the 98 must be 130. That fixes that up. And now all we need to do is address this issue here with this bar doing this. So the quick fix for that is, and maybe for this exercise it's better if I'm going to pick this. Actually, let's just pick let's just pick this bar and the concrete. Right click, show only selected. And then what I'm going to do is just trigger my construction lines again so I can see this sort of thing. So what I want to do is, if you click here, you can see we've got if we go to the opposite side, we've got a guideline here. Now I've got my view not set deep enough. So maybe what we're going to do is let's go over to the 3D view so we can see it better here. So just got to find the bars again. So it's these bars are clashing with that. So what we can do with these bars, if we click on them and click on the concrete, we can then right click, show only selected, and then trigger our construction lines again. And then what we can do is, we look at this over on the other side, we have our guideline. Now to get this one to taper in, it's very easy. You can just, when you click on this bar, go over there and say, give me a secondary line guide. And this time I want it from there. And because I was in that mode, it just sort of picked one. But what you can do is you can just hover over it, take this arrow and pull it back to that. Now, as soon as you do that, you can see how this curves in, like so. And it will automatically curve in the other side as well. Now, if we do a redraw, we can see what's happened here now. Now we have enough space to miss it there. Now, to ensure that these bars don't change. Now, but while we're at it, let's just do this side as well, because we have the same problem on this side. So there's our lead, our guideline. And if we say, give us a secondary guideline, and this time I'll trigger this just to show you. If we now go from this point here to that intersection there and say middle mouse, you can see how it pulls it back. Now to ensure, because you sort of tapering, it's also going to taper the hooks on these. So if I go right click and I go inquire, you can see we're generating a lot of bars just because of this thing. So to ensure that does not happen, I can click on this bar and I can click on this bar, right click and isolate them. And then what we can do is we can go to, when we select the bar, we can go to end detail and load out standards and say we don't want a hook, no hook, but we do want an adjustment type being a leg length, and the leg length must be 300. Once we do that and we hit this side, now I've got to go to my one pick mode again. Once I pick this side, it will force all those legs the same length. I've got to do the same on this side. Those all get forced the same length. And then we'll repeat on this side. If I click on this and say, give us an end detail, still the same settings. Hover over this leg, all the same length, and do this, all the same length, irrespective of the guidelines now. Now, if you look at these bars, if I can, let me just pick that group to sort of illustrate it better. Pick a group. If I pick these bars now and I right click and say inquire, it's a single line. Tekla is now forcing them all the same. So you've just got to be a bit wary of there. There's a lot of tricks and trades and ways you can solve these problems. And if I click on this one and I click on that one and say right click inquire, you can see we have a single line. I've clicked two bars, but it's a single line. It's 12 of them, 6 in each bar. So it keeps the bars similar very quickly. So now let me just switch off my construction lines because we're done. If I now look at this, we can see we've pretty much eliminated all the clashes on that corner. It's very congested, and we've eliminated all the clashes there. And just going around the slab here, that all looks good, and this all looks good. Now, what I like to do with congested reinforcement like that is I like to go to a perspective view and say modify OK, because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but if I look at reinforcement in the perspective view, it sort of looks more obvious to me what's going on. You sort of get it. It's sort of it's a far better way to visualize it. It's not a good setting for it's really not a good setting for modeling with, because it's sometimes difficult to rotate and all that type of stuff. But it's absolutely brilliant for viewing. Um, you know, so we can see there, how well this actually came out. It's really quite simple. So it was a bit of a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something from it. And even if there's a technique that I use that can help you with your work, that would be great. Otherwise, looking forward to seeing you in the next video.